And Jeff, thank you for just looking after the room for me. I know Rachel's away at the moment, so
You're welcome.
thank you. Okay, I'm going to. What time is it? 7:34. So just give it another minute, and then we'll make a start. And I'll introduce our speaker tonight.
Phil should be here. He told me he was going to be on. Usually you, but not yet.
So I hope everyone, wherever you are, has been enjoying the much improved weather we've had. It's been pretty good for April and the beginning of May. Good evening to Keith.
Evening.
Are you back in Scotland, Keith?
No, I'm still down here. Busy working, laying floors and the such like. Going back this weekend.
Okay. Are you coming back home for a rest then?
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna go on mute my video because I'm munching my dinner at the moment.
Yeah, no problem. I'm about to make a start and introduce Jim as well, our speaker tonight. So, and while I've got Jeff looking after the waiting room for me, that's a big help. Okay, I'm going to hit record and I'm going to do a proper introduction, and then I'm going to hand the microphone over to Jim. Would people mind, apart from Jim, of course, people mind just putting themselves on mute? I'll run down to do it in case I get there before you, just so we don't get accidental interruptions. I'm going to hit record. Okay, very big welcome to tonight's meeting at Pennine Ham Radio Club, and we're very pleased indeed to introduce our speaker tonight, who is Jim, WA3TFS, and I'll say a couple of words in a minute about what drew me to invite Jim to come along and give us this talk tonight. So a very big welcome to everybody, and hope that you enjoy tonight's meeting and that you find it useful and interesting. Just a couple of bits of news. We've got our next meeting in 2 weeks' time on the 21st of May, and we have a speaker talking to us on a beginner's guide to using satellites in amateur radio. So lots of interest there for those that have never tried to do it, and those who have done it, to talk about their experiences and the pleasure they've had of doing so. I know we've got one or two in the room who've done that, and other club members who do make regular use of the passing satellites or the transponder on the space station. So looking forward to that meeting. That's on the 21st of May. Yeah, our speaker tonight is Jim, WA3TFS. And I came across, I've come across actually a couple of times articles by Jim in QST, the magazine of the ARRL in North America. And it's an organisation which I belong to, and enjoyed reading QST, their magazine, and have done for quite a few years. But Jim wrote an article in the March edition of QST, and the article was entitled "A Linear Amplifier for QRP Rigs." And by linear amplifier, we're not talking about, before Jim cuts me off at that point, we're not talking about a kilowatt linear amplifier or even 500 watts. We're talking about a little linear amplifier to increase the power from your portable radio of 5 watts to just 20 watts. And when I saw the article and read the piece he had written, and I know he's also produced some notes that go along with this as well, it's actually a very, very straightforward and simple design. And I'm not alone in this room because we've got a number of people in the club who enjoy portable operating and enjoy using QRP portable operating. But sometimes, and I would say this particularly if you're using single sideband or even FM on VHF, that just having that little bit of extra power, not 100 watts even, but 20 watts is sometimes necessary to make those QSOs that you want to make, particularly the DX ones, where 5 watts may be a little bit too small. And by 5 watts, I mean, you know, radios like the FT817, 818, or the ICOM 705 running on its internal battery, you know, they're all 5 or 6 watt radios, and they're lovely radios, work extremely well. But sometimes just that little bit of extra power is useful. So I thought it would be worthwhile inviting Jim just to come along and give us a talk about the design for this, how well it works, and how difficult or easy it is to put together. So Jim, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you.
All right, well, thanks very much. I want to thank Nick for inviting me to address the club this evening. And of course, it's afternoon here. I'm in the Pittsburgh in Western Pennsylvania area of the U.S. And nice to be invited here to the Pennine Amateur Radio Club. Well, like Nick said, the article was in QST in the March issue. That's what it looks like. And it's a very simple design. I operate as well, running QRP quite often. And like Nick said, there's sometimes you just need a little more power to get through that bad atmospheric conditions. And 20 watts seems to be a good balance. It's easy on the batteries, and it's very it's enough level to get you through a lot of times. If they can't hear you on, or if they can almost hear you on 5 watts or 4 watts or whatever you're running, they'll probably hear you fine with 20 watts. And I usually get a lot of reports of 5.7, 5.8, sometimes 5.9 running on 20 watts when I'm only putting out 4 or 5 watts at other times. Of course, the US meters on most radios are not calibrated very well, so you know, the actual S reading doesn't mean a whole lot. Just to give you a little idea of what I use for portable operation, I've got a couple of the rigs here that I built. This is this little sideband transceiver that I built. This is just 40 meters single sideband. And this is a CW 40-meter transceiver. All these run 5 watts output. This was in QST as well a couple of years ago. And I have one of these Zygu transceivers here. Picked that up to give it a try. Not a bad radio overall. And I also use this one quite often. It's actually a portable transceiver for 40 meters. It's got a 3D printed key on the side as well. And you just open it up, and there's the radio right there. That transceiver that's in there is the same as the other one I showed in a bud box, in an aluminum box. This has a little space for a little notepad and pen and so forth. So very portable. Hook up some power and an antenna, and 5 watts CW only. But to get on to the QRP amplifier, this is actually the PC board for that amplifier. And so far, there's been about 70 of these built from around the world. And it's a fiberglass board, full ground plane on the back side here, and silk screen plated through holes and all that. So it makes it very easy to assemble. All my design use through hole parts only, no surface mount, because it's difficult for most people to work with. So I try and go through the problems of finding the through-hole parts that will do the job for the particular application that I'm trying. To give you some background on myself, I've been an amateur radio operator for about 54 years now. So, and even my first contact was with homebrew equipment. So I had a lot of fun doing that sort of stuff. And I've worked for many years as an electronic design engineer. So since retiring, it gives me time to do this sort of thing. But to get into the amplifier, this is an example of one of them that was in the article here. And they cover various bands. And the only reason they're on different bands is for the low pass filter. I've made provisions on the PC board for one low pass filter. So I designed the board originally to be for 40 meters, but I have values specified there for all the other bands, HF bands from 160 through 10 meters, if you wanted to build it for that. If you want to build it for all the bands, for the HF bands, you just switch in other filters. For example, here's an amplifier that I built that uses filters. I don't know if you can see this or not. Put the filters on a board in the front down here in this area, and I switch them, and then the PC board for the amplifier is in there, and I don't have the onboard filter on the amplifier built in. And this one has an AC supply in it, as well as you can run it off DC as for 12 volts. So to get around to the design application here, I had certain design requirements before starting this design of the amplifier. First of all, I wanted it to be compact in size, so it'd be easy to use portable. It had to run off a 12 to 14 volt range, because that's what I use for portable operation. It has to have decent gain, so 20 watts was what I was going for there, because it's easy on battery drainage, and it seems to be a good level to work with. I wanted to put RF switching into it, so it'd be easy to use with multiple rigs. You can just put RF in, it's going to switch. I wanted to put the filtering in internal on the board, because I didn't want to use external filtering for it. You can't carry too many things around when you're trying to do portable operation. I wanted to keep the cost down as much as possible, but not to compromise the design. Of course, it had to be linear, because I wanted to use it for sideband and digital modes, as well as CW. So I made it linear. With that consideration in mind there, the hold-in time when it switches, I had to set that so that it would work well for high-speed CW and sideband, and also slow-speed CW, because I do make contacts with people that are running only 4 or 5 words per minute sometimes, just getting started. And so I actually specified on the schematic the value of a cap you can put in there to slow the release time, so that the amplifier is not switching in and out between dots and dashes and so forth. What I've done for most of these, you can see on the front panel, I've got a fast slow switch that all I really do is switch in that extra capacitor to slow it down, or just switch it out for the sideband or higher speed CW operation. I also wanted to put indicators on it so that I knew when it was turned on and off, because it's so easy to leave something on and drain the battery when you don't really need it. And as I said before, I try to do all through-hole parts, just so it's easy to assemble. Here's the schematic for it. It's very simple. Change my angle here a little bit. The input, I'll work backwards here. course, the RF in is over right in this area here. It's divided. It goes to the switching of the relay that's on board, but it also goes up to the area up in here, this amplifier detector that detects the RF and triggers the MOSFET here, which turns on power. Well, first of all, it closes the relay, and it also turns on power to the FETs. I use the IRF 510 FETs, which are so common, mainly because they're just so inexpensive. I don't know what it costs there in the UK, but I can get them here for less than $1 a piece, and they're very reliable. And I've used them in several applications. Also built an amplifier that's used in some of the other rigs there that with 100 milliwatts in gives you almost 5 watts output. So I use it as a final for that as well. Now the onboard filtering is five stage filtering, so it gives you pretty decent roll off and keep you in compliance. What I did is also put in here an adjustable bias for each of the FETs individually, because they just don't work the same. A lot of designs use a single adjustment, and you set it for a certain gain, and it's just you get away with it sometimes. Other times, one of the FETs will pull too much current and end up burning up by itself. So I put the individual ones in there. A couple extra components were well worth worth it for this application. There is a little mistake in the article when they edited it. They said that the input transformer T1 gives a 180-degree shift to drive the two amplifiers, and it's not true. It actually just separates the drive to the two FETs. So they're actually driven together. They're not driven 180 degrees out of phase, and then they're combined on the output. Now, by using the output configuration, which is a little bit strange in this application from what you usually see over in this area here, this has an advantage, not an intended advantage, but if you were to have your antenna disconnected or very high SWR for some reason, intermittently, it will absorb some of the energy, and you won't burn up your FETs. They seem to be very reliable that way. So it was a good help to do that sort of thing. Overall, there's not a lot of components here. Of course, I've designed the PC boards, and I've put together kits for it. And I say several of these have been built, and I've made hundreds and hundreds of contacts with my QRP rigs that I've built, and with the amplifier as well. And the amplifier itself draws less than 4 amps of current key down. So it's not too bad on the batteries when you have to run a little bit more power like that. The components are all readily available. They're not really expensive. Onboard switching with the relay and the filtering makes it very convenient to build. And if you want to put this on other bands, you just have to change a couple of component values in the low pass filter stage. Now, if you want to build it for multiple bands, like the one amplifier I showed, you can do the input low pass filter and just set that up for the highest frequency that you want to use on the radio, for 10 meter, for instance, and then just switch in the output low pass filter, and that will work just fine as well. The input configuration for this amplifier is there's an attenuator on the front end, and it runs into a low pass filter, a 2-component filter. This tends to give you a better input SWR over the broad range of the band that you're using. And it seems to work pretty well like that. Overall, the input to this of anywhere from about 3.5 watts or so will give you 20 watts or on 20 watts output on 40 meters. On 160 meters, it'll give you about 28 watts out or so. On the higher frequency bands, it'll give you 20. Typically, the switching on it, the RF switching, will work down to about a 1 watt. So if you put more than 1 watt in, this amplifier will work. Now, there has been a problem that has shown up with the QMX transceivers that are fairly widespread. People put those together. And they have a problem in the software in that if you try to drive an RF switching amplifier with it, it will shut down. It doesn't like that instantaneous high SWR that it's trying to detect, I guess. So to work around that, you can apply on this amplifier board. There's 2 places there. If you have a plus 5 volts or plus 12 volts available on your push to talk, you can apply it to one place and it'll switch everything as normal. Or if you have a ground on your push to talk, you can put it to another place and it'll also switch to normal operation. Now, I'm going to mention here, the amplifier board itself needs to be configured once it's assembled. And that needs, the only adjustment needed for it and the only test equipment needed for it is a multimeter or an ammeter. Because the FETs are not ideally matched, you really need to set them separately for their initial starting point, their gain point. And by doing that, all you have to do is put a little jumper on one side of a diode that's across the relay with no input, with a dummy load on the output or an antenna on the output, and read the amount of current that's being drained at that point. Now, the current would be LEDs if you're using those to indicate power on and switching, and the current to close the relay, the current to drive the RF switching part of it. So let's say, for instance, it's 10 milliamps. It's normally less than that, but let's say it's 10 milliamps. Then you adjust one bias to give you 30 milliamps of current on the one FET. So you'd have a reading of 40 at that point there, 40 milliamps. And then you adjust the other one for 30 milliamps of current. So then you would have 70 milliamps of current. And once you do that, you take the jumper back off and the amplifier is ready to use. Nothing much more to it than that. It's just uses a little black box. You just put power in and power comes out. And if the power is switched off, the relay transfers your RF directly through the amplifier to your antenna. And when the power is switched on, the amplifier is then active. So that's a quick rundown of that. Now, just as a sidelight, this is another amplifier, looks the same, but it's actually 5 watts in and 50 watts out. I have not published this one as yet. It's very similar to the 20 watt amplifier, uses different devices, and there's a couple little changes to it to make it work as well. So, there's another thing I wanted to show you here. Might be interested in. That's a British telegraph key from World War II. I like using that one. That's a good feel to it. Added a little button here beneath the knob just to make it more usable. So that's a quick rundown. I'd be glad to take any questions that you may have. And I guess that's about it then. Thanks for inviting me. So Nick, can you switch it over then?
Yeah, sorry, Jim. I put in the chat the assembly manual that was added to the QST in depth online.
Yes.
I've put that in the chat so people can see the circuit diagram and the components. Just a couple of bits. We've got several people in the club who are members of the GQRP club, and in fact, we as a club ran their stall for them at the Northern Amateur Radio Society rally just a few weekends ago. And the GQRP club sell lots of the bits that you need for assembling your amplifier. The RF 510 FETs are 50p each, so very, very cheap indeed. The 2N3904 that is also used by you, the transistor, they only sell them in bundles of 10, and that will cost you 50p as well. So the most of the transistors and the FETs in it are very, very cheap and easily available in the UK, and GQRP club members can buy them from GQRP club sales, which helps considerably.
Yeah, those transistors are very cheap, and as far as the 2N3904, you can substitute just about anything for that because you're
Any NPN,
such a
yeah.
low frequency and all. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I had a couple of questions, but you've answered them already, Jim. One was about will all transmitters be comfortable with the RF actuation? So you've answered that with the QMX, and I know that's sold by GQRP Club, GQRP Labs, and I know it's a very popular in this country. Lots of people, several members of our club have got the QMX transceivers and make use of them. So if there is a workaround for that, that would be very helpful. My other question to you is, what happens is, I mean, you specify the amplifier is designed for 13.7 volts. What's the kind of highest voltage you might run it at without causing a problem? And the reason I say that is quite a few of us operating portable use the small lithium batteries, the LiPo batteries. And 3 cells will give you about 11 watts. The 4-cell ones give you more like 15 volts. And I wondered which of those would be best to use on an amplifier like yours, Jim.
Well, I've run this on up to 18 volts or so with no problem whatsoever. It's not going to give you a lot more gain, but it will work fine at those voltages. There's no problem there. The parts that are in there are specified. They'll handle that amount of voltage.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And my other question was about the RF into the input. I mean, is there any way of building something to stop you accidentally, if you were using it on a non-QRP radio, accidentally putting more power into the amplifier than you wanted to put in? Or is it actually safest just to say this amplifier is only ever to be used with a radio running no more than 5 watts out?
Well, if you were to put in if you had a 100-watt amplifier or a 100-watt transceiver and key up the amplifier, you're probably going to burn out the input filter. I mean, not the filter, but the input attenuator. Those 3 transistors on the input. They're good for 5 watts, 10 watts or so, but they're not going to handle the higher power than that. And it will attempt to switch if it sees RF on the input. So yes, it will damage it. And the only way you could really stop that possibly would be to put a Zener diode across the input that would limit the amount of voltage that could get to the FETs, but you're going to add a lot of capacitance and so forth on the input. So I would just say it's a QRP amplifier, and you got to be careful not to put too much into it.
Indeed. I'm just going to put on the screen, if you don't mind, Jim, just so people can see it, a copy of the assembled board, because I've got it on from QST. So that's
Okay.
a photograph from your assembly manual of the the final assembled board there.
Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned the assembly manual. It's you can download that off of my website, and it gives you step-by-step instructions to build the board if you want to build it.
Yeah, good. I've put it into the chat, Jim, so people can see it as well here tonight. But okay, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to just put it out to the club, really. Anyone got any questions to Jim or contribution on this, or would maybe give a go at building this? Who's going to be the brave person going to try to build this?
Certainly, if anybody would want a kit, I do have kits available. So it makes it a little easier to get the parts together, and it gets you the PC board too as well.
Okay, thank you. Is the link to that on your own website, Jim?
Yeah, my website is WA3TFS.com, and if you wanted to order on there, you can order on there. You can download the assembly manual on there. You can download the schematics, and for this and many of my projects there, including the QRP rigs and all. So it's everything's online there. You can use it as you see fit.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. That's very useful indeed. Okay, anyone got a question or comment they want to put to Jim? Don't all go quiet on me.
All right, I'll go, Nick. Go on.
Yeah, go on, Martin, go on.
I'm trying to behave myself. Great talk, Jim. Seriously, great talk. And it's nice to see that people like yourself are out there producing products rather than just buying it from China. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. My real reason to do all this sort of stuff is I've noticed, in recent years, people aren't building anything, and because of that, they're not learning anything. And I just try and make something simple available that people can, if they have a need for it, they can put it together themselves and see that they really can do that. I mean, people aren't even building a dipole antenna anymore. They're buying them. And I mean, that's just, that's not amateur radio as far as I'm concerned, but, teach their own.
The problem today is, and every time I see people building interesting stuff on YouTube, and then they go to use the soldering iron, and I cringe. I won't bore you too much, but I left school in 1970. I went to work for Philips, the big electronics company, and I had to spend a week in their training school before they give me a job, a full-time job. And you spent 2.5 days learning how to solder and solder wires on the tag strips so you didn't melt insulation. And then you see people just daubing blobs of solder. So to do your project, you've got to know how to solder, and that shouldn't be a negative. There are far too many idiots out there who can't solder.
Yeah, but just plug the parts in and solder.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much for your comments.
No props.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And anyone else with a comment or question to Jim while we have him here? I mean, I think there's probably, I can see in the room here a number of people who do go out running portable with 5-watt transmitters, and I think you will probably agree, particularly on single sideband. I mean, CW is my mode, Jim, and it is for a number of people, but you can definitely find it a lot easier to work DX with CW 5 watts than single sideband 5 watts, and that is, unfortunately, that's the case. And I know that's why the QRP community, generally defines QRP for single sideband as being 10 watts rather than 5. But I liked the concept of your 20 watts for this linear, because 20 watts is about the sweet spot for me in terms of driving a low power radio. And I also very much liked both the simplicity of your design and that in particular, it had the ability to turn itself on by reading the RF that was coming into it. I think that's a very, very useful addition to this amplifier you've built here.
Yeah, it seems that making hundreds of contacts with it, it seems to be working very well and very reliable. And it seems to have the features that I wanted when I first started the design. So I'm happy with it.
Good, very good indeed. Yeah, thank you. I haven't looked at your website yet. I don't know if anyone else in the club here has had a look at Jim's website, but you know, you talked about, I mean, you've written previous articles for QST, I know, on some other designs. Are all those on your website as well? Are they there for us to have a look at?
They are on the website. There's one of the first articles I wrote for QST was about using the inexpensive RTL dongles and did an up converter to make that work on the HF bands. And that one's very popular. I've sold probably 275 of those or so. There's an audio low pass or an audio notch filter clipper circuit that also has an amplifier on it that you can build any of the three stages or all of the three stages and use it as a final of a homebrew receiver. I've built in my transceivers, I've used the notch filter portion of that. And it's a notch filter is kind of unique, and it really consists of a high pass filter and a low pass filter that track each other and give you the notch in between the two rather than as a resonant circuit as such. And because of that, it allows you to attenuate the high frequencies and the low frequencies depending on where you have the adjustment. So it's really good for getting rid of interference. And the clipper circuit is good if you have a lot of like static from lightning crashes and so forth. Then there's also an SDR transceiver that's in there that's been published in QST. There's an HF receiver. In fact, here's the receiver that was also in QST. And my sideband rig that I showed you before actually uses the receiver board that's in there, and then adds the single sideband generation capability to it, and then taps into the IF stage for the filtering and for the amplification. So it's very useful. I also there's another article that has just come out, or no, it will be coming out in QST, and that's on a CW filter, no audio CW filter, very simple, but gives you about a 200 hertz bandwidth or so for CW. And there's a 10 meter and or 6 meter FM transceiver SDR on that website as well that I did. And a few other odds and ends. There's an article on there about how to build a variable inductor to load your antenna for pennies. And that's very useful. I use that all the time for portable. And incidentally, this amplifier actually was submitted to QST a year and a half or so before it was published. So they sat on it for quite a while, but it is published now. I also had an article recently in the May issue of Spectrum Monitor magazine. It's an online magazine. I don't know if anybody sees that, but it's about some teenagers in New Zealand who made the first radio contact with home-built equipment quite a while before the commercial people actually did. And it was back in 1908. Very interesting article, and it's published in there. And I got involved in that by actually finding a capacitor that they had put together and was able to track it back to them in New Zealand. And it was apparently brought here by one of those three teenagers who did that. when he moved here to the United States and lived not too far away from where I live, actually. So that's about what's on my website, that and more. And you can download all the software for the various devices there. You can download the assembly manuals for the receiver, for the transceivers, for the amplifier, and all kinds of other information on there. So feel free to go check it out and download what you want.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. I'm just going to put on the screen because we've had a long debate about, and we've got a number of people in the room here who use loading coils on the 16-foot, 15-foot, 6-inch telescopic whip antennas to enable to run them on 40 meters. And there are commercial versions around, of course, both sold through China and in various people have assembled them around the world. But in your, you just reminded me on you did publish an article about a simple what you describe as a simple variable inductor from trash. And I'm just going to, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put it on the screen and just show people, just to inspire people about what you can do with very simple things. Let me just put this on the screen. So just running through this, and this is available from your website as well, I think, isn't it? This is the items that you said are necessary to build the variable inductor. Some petroleum jelly and some cable, plastic box, and here is the slider. Do you just want to talk to us, Jim, about how this actually works, this ferrite sleeve and the slider with epoxy or hot melt glue?
Yeah, this is actually built into a disposed deodorant container that has a little knob on the bottom. You twist it and it pushes the deodorant out the top. So by just using that container, adding the a ferrite core around the centerpiece there, it would move up and down as you turn the knob. And by putting a coil then on the outside, as you see on the screen right now, the ferrite moves up and down within the coil and changes the inductance of the coil. And you can use this to base load or mid load a wire antenna or any other antenna. And it gives you a chance to tune that antenna very simply by just rotating that knob. So it costs you next to nothing, a little bit of wire and a ferrite core, and that's it.
Lovely, thank you, Jim. Yeah, I thought that was a very, very nice, simple design. And there's here are some examples of the in use for different lengths of loaded antenna.
Yeah, base loading and center loading, different frequencies there. So, and you can wind as many turns as you need there to give you the inductance that you might need for your particular antenna. But this is an example of what would work with what I've designed here.
Lovely, thank you very much. No, that was very, very, very good indeed. So I recommend people to have a look at Jim's website and maybe be inspired to make their own adjustable loading coil. Ken, yeah, go on.
Jim, that's a heartening talk. I'm 94 now. I'm not quite as nimble as I used to be, but a talk about do-it-yourself, no SMD stuff, no mention at all about FT8. Great. My first QRP CW rig used a BC108, 40 milliamps on a 9-volt battery, and I worked all over the world with it. But it's great fun to hear people talking about proper radio without getting. And you know, I love the one about the deodorant tube, late night, and you know, old-fashioned stuff still works. I'm the president of the local club, and I try to drive them to do things like you don't have to have a tower and a beam. and I do it all on wires now, and I have done for about 25 years. And it's very hard to get club members to realise you can do it with wires. And I find now that of the members that we have, some of them, quite a number of them out there now buying new rigs. If only they would put them on the air and then they've got them, there will be something in it. But they seem to have them in the boxes. And I really do appreciate your philosophy. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's true. There's fewer people that are building right now, and it's unfortunate because, another example, if you build something, you're able to fix it yourself. Now you hear all the time people say, "Oh, a light went out on my panel on my radio. I have to send it back to Yaesu or Kenwood to have them fix a panel light." They're afraid to open it up and do something. And that's unfortunate because, the technical aspect of amateur radio is what drove me to do what I do. And I think it's a fantastic learning experience. And it opens up tremendous opportunities for young people to advance in their career and do something really worthwhile.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Ken. I mean, I think particularly Ken's point, Jim, about antennas is a very important one. We've got a lot of people in our club who are playing with different antennas, particularly wire antennas, and seeing how they work and which fit in the space they've got and so on. So that's one of the things that as a club, in our club here, we're really trying to encourage members to do. Please do not go to one of the emporiums and buy yourself a wire antenna. Please experiment for yourself and see what you can make yourself. I mean, we've got, whether it's, the transformers for end-fed half waves, whether it's an off-center fed dipole, whether it's a Wyndham antenna, and so on. Whether it's a quarter wave wire of some sort. All these things are very, very easy to build for just a few pennies, and you don't have to spend an awful lot of money to enjoy the hobby that we all enjoy.
Very true. I use most of the time I use an inverted L antenna that I've got at the highest point. It's fed about 20 feet above ground. At the highest point, it's about 65 feet, and then it slopes down to about 15 feet pointing to the west. And it seems to work very well on signals that are vertical or horizontally polarized. And I also have a ground-mounted vertical antenna that sometimes is better than the inverted L, and other times not quite as good. So it's good to play with. I like wire antennas. The wildest wire antenna I ever had was a 1/4 mile long rhombic antenna that a couple of us put up one time to try some portable operation. A fella had a farm and a big pasture and a lot of trees on the outside of the pasture, and we stretched out a 1/4 mile long rhombic antenna, and I'll tell you, that gave some fantastic results. We used aluminum electric fence wire to do that, so that was just a fun experience.
Yeah, wouldn't we all love to have a quarter of a mile long garden we could put one in?
I don't have that.
No, not many of us do. Ken, over to you, Ken. You got your hand up.
Just unmuted myself. Right. Yeah, thank you, Jim, for a very interesting talk. I'm G4VZV. My name is Ken. Yeah, I think what we're up against with building, like you've suggested, a linear amplifier, and one that comes to mind is the Chinese one that you can buy off AliExpress or whatever other, and it's called the MX50, which is very small, just a little bit bigger than a phone, a portable phone. And I would imagine that the difference is because that one covers 10 meters to 40. But I would imagine that the difference is that you've probably got better filtering, because I believe that the MX50 lacks filters to such
Right.
a degree.
That's the main problem. Yeah, that's the main problem with most of those. Is there's no filtering in them. They don't usually have RF switching, and they also don't tend to be very reliable. And they also tend to be mostly Class C.
Yeah. And I am aware that if you exceed the input power on him, you'll soon blow the amplifier. I did have one actually about 10 years ago, but it got stolen in a house burglary. But nothing I could do about that. But it was primarily for portable. But I do like the idea of the construction, which brings me on to the next question. Do you sell the board, but do you actually sell a kit with the parts?
I do.
You do, right?
Yes.
That's something.
I do sell a kit, and it has all the parts that mount on the PC board. So you'd have to put it in your own enclosure and provide a switch and RF connectors and that sort of stuff. Now, it does cost quite a bit to ship one of those over to the UK. It's about $22 US. But I could send 20 of them for $50. I can send one for only $22.
Right, understand. Yeah, and I mean that's the reason why I've never made anything like this, and I'm being very honest, is that when I first learned about radio, I was really interested in construction. But for one reason or another, the younger you are, your lives flourish into different ways. You get married, this, that, and other. You don't have much time for construction. Children come along, even less time. And it's only now, in sort of the middle-aged years, that I'm finding time to build antennas, again, to build little antenna tuning units and what have you. So I think time and life, life's varied life incidents, make it so that it's very difficult, because you can't just get your soldering iron out and solder one of these kits in an hour. You need a lot longer time, and you need to put it down and come back to it the next day. But I certainly think that this looks a really good idea for anyone that's doing low power as well. So thank you.
I think
Jim.
you can assemble this in about 4 to 5 hours. Most of the time is involved in winding the coils. Otherwise, you're just plugging the parts in and soldering them.
Yeah.
I know what you mean about the time. It's that's why I can do this stuff now that I've retired. I'm 78 years old, so it gives me a chance to do that sort of stuff.
Right. Yeah, do understand. Yeah, very good. Well, thank you again, Jim. It's very enlightening, is this, I must say. Okay, back to you.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, and I think Jim made the point, Ken, by the way, that there are no surface mount devices in this build as well, because I'm not the only person who, even with magnifying glasses, really does struggle with surface mount devices, so this is all very, very straightforward to assemble. It reminds me, as you said, Ken, back in the number of people in the room here will remember, there were a number of we had a magazine in the UK called Ham Radio Today. Anyone remember Ham Radio Today? And there were a number of companies that produced the kits that went along for some of the builds in that, for things like a sideband, a double sideband transceiver for 80 meters. I built that myself from the design in Ham Radio Today. There was that kind of stuff around, and I think it's definitely worthwhile. That's when I saw Jim's design and realized actually this is a fairly simple and straightforward design. I mean, as Jim honestly said there, the only slight down thing is the having to pay $20 to get the thing posted to the UK. But that's the only very a feature we can do nothing about. But many of the parts are available, and I guess, Jim, here's a question to you. We do have people. We've got, I can't remember his name now. We've got a member of our club who did send off. Oh, Roger, G4UFZ. He was making a small design, and from the designed the printed circuit board and got them printed from a company fairly cheaply. The actual boards, the unit cost of each one. He had to get 10 boards printed, but the unit cost was quite small. And I wondered if you could supply us with the outline of the board, we could probably get that made over here even cheaper than you posting it to us, Jim.
Well, I could provide you with boards too, and if you bought a certain quantity there, it wouldn't be very expensive to send them over.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking of, because most of these all these components are easily available, very cheaply indeed, not just from the GQRP club sales, but they're very, very easy to obtain in this country. And although GQRP sales are probably cheaper even than buying them from China, I have to say to people, and I know they are only selling components which are reasonable quality as well. The problem with some of the FETs is that some of them are very poor quality, and you have to buy several of them before you find the one that actually works.
Yeah, I found a couple of suppliers here in the U.S. that are very high quality parts. DigiKey and Mauser, for instance. I don't know if you heard those names before, but that's where I buy my components from. But as I say, if you, the thing about a circuit board there is you got to make sure that you can't just throw traces on a board. You have to consider different things about the capacitance between runs and so forth. So I really like to keep control of the circuit board. But if, like I say, if you had a group that wanted, a dozen boards or something, I'm sure we could arrange something like that, and that wouldn't be that expensive to ship one time, a package.
Yeah, Mauser and DigiKey have both got UK-based companies as well.
Okay.
So we can order it internally in the UK from Mauser and DigiKey, which is helpful.
Okay, yeah. If you buy from DigiKey, you'll get some quality FETs.
Okay, brilliant. Martin.
Yeah, just quickly. I think it was Kane, and I apologise, mentioned about building it and no through holes and no surface mounting of bits and pieces. What I was going to say is, whenever you sit and build one of these kits, I always sit down quietly and enjoy the build process. I had a friend of mine, and I built the Ellicraft 20-watt tuner when they used to sell it as a kit. He built his in 2 hours, and it never worked properly. I took about 6 hours because I just sat there and just enjoyed and had a cup of coffee and whatever. Mine worked perfectly. One thing I will say, and I'm sorry if I'm teaching everybody to suck eggs, when you wind your toroids and you put them in the board, measure them with a multimeter and make sure they got continuity, because the number of fixes I've had to do for people where they've blobbed a load of solder around the insulation, I forget the word, I'm suffering for the word, but you make sure that you can actually see a connection between the two wires on the board. That will solve a lot of your problems, and I'll shut up at that point.
Yeah, that's why in the assembly manual it specifies make sure you scrape all the insulation off the wires and solder them correctly.
Yeah, but
That's
people
a
don't
common
read
problem.
that bit. Yeah.
A little piece of sandpaper does the job, Martin.
Oh, lots of good things you can do, yes, but as I say,
I like to
I've had
scrape
to
them.
repair lots.
Yeah, I like to scrape them with a razor blade and make them nice and shiny, and then solder them in.
Yeah. If you clean them up and you tin them, then you know that it will take solder when it goes on the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now there was a question about the kit. So this is what the kit actually looks like. That's one for 40 meters. It covers the 40-meter band. Incidentally, like there's actually 4 versions of the amplifier. The one is 160, 80, and 75 meters is covered. The next one is 60 and 40 meters, and then 30, 20, and 17 meters, and then 15, 12, and 10 meters. And in reality, on 10 meters, if you're not going to make a contact with 5 watts, you're probably not going to make it with 20 either.
Yeah, 10 meters is a wonderful band when it's open, Jim. You can.
I actually worked the state 250 miles away from me back at the last cycle, not this present one, with 100 milliwatt walkie-talkie AM, and I actually made a contact with that. So 10 meters is amazing.
It is indeed, and in fact, I think Mike, it's Mike in Germany, DL1BJW. I think you were saying at the last meeting, didn't you work into the US with 500 milliwatts?
Yes, that's right. But of course, it's always a question of the time of the day and the frequency. But sometimes I'm lucky, yes.
I have actually worked New Zealand with 5 watts sideband on 40 meters.
That's
So
amazing.
when conditions are right, conditions are right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, then I'll sign off of here. Thank you very much for the invite to address your club, and nice meeting everybody. And I'll look for you on the air, I guess.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you very much, Jim. Very, very much appreciated. Can we show appreciation to Jim in the normal way? Thank you, Jim. Yeah, Jim. And if we get a number of people who come back to us and say they'd be interested in getting your board, then I'll come back to you and see if you can send us a few out, and obviously we'll pay you for the cost of the boards. And because I suspect getting the components is very straightforward for us here in the UK at very reasonable prices, and there's no point in having to pay all the extra postage for that. If actually what people would really find helpful would be the boards in the first place. So might follow up on that. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Thank you very much. 73s.
7-3.
Okie dokie. I've turned the record off, by the way, and a very interesting talk from Jim there. But it was, his design, if you look at the assembly manual, it's a very, very simple design. And I think people would be surprised that it would not be that difficult to build that. What you got there, Phil? Got no sound. You've got no sound. You've got no audio, Phil. Still no audio. You have unmuted, but there's...
There we go. Now we've got audio.
That's it.
Yeah. This is what they call a Packer amp, which is made with the 510 FETs the same. This I built 20 plus years ago. It's a lot more complex because it's actually multi-band with multiple bandpass filters, all built around the switch itself. And it's also got in there a 12 volt to 28 volt DC-DC converter so that it runs at a higher voltage, all RF switched, and generates about 35 watts out. But you can see tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these were made as a kit, and they're still made, but they are expensive. I brought this back from one of my Dayton trips, say 20 plus years ago, and built this one. But it is really crammed into that little box. There's a lot going on in there. I mean, the bandpass filters alone are built on both sides of the board. You've got capacitors on one side of the board and all the ferrites on the other. And it's really crammed in there. But it's a great little amp. This is what I use all the time, about 35 watts out. But yeah.
Well, that's what that's what Ken was saying earlier about that MX50 that, you know, you can buy in the UK fairly cheaply.
Yeah.
You know, although it's got switching between the bands, I don't think it's got
no bandpass filters at all.
It hasn't got bandpass filters in it. No, exactly.
No.
So you're probably reasonably safe using it out in a field somewhere.
Yeah.
Or down by the beach, because you're unlikely to be spraying RF all over the place. But you wouldn't want to be operating one of those from home, I don't think.
Well, that's going to be out west in 2.5 weeks' time. So I'll be in W7 land with this in 2.5 weeks' time.
Excellent. Ken, you got your hand up. Is that just from earlier, or you want to make another comment? No.
The MX50, is that audio or is that RF? Because looking at the one that's on Ali there, it looks like it's just an audio amplifier.
Now the MX50 is a linear amplifier for 5 watts in, giving about 50 watts out for SSB and CW. But as I said, the problem with the MX50 is the fact that, first of all, it hasn't got RF switching on it. Now that's a different bit of kit altogether. That's a different piece of kit, Henry. See if I can find it. Yeah, it's sold in, mind you, it's quite expensive, you know, Ken. The MX 50, it's on sale in AliExpress for £140.
Yes, it's shot up in price. I mean, about maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I bet you could buy that for £60, £70.
Here we are, 45 watts MX50 PM HF power amplifier. It's not RF, it's not activated by RF yet. It's got a control line on it which you have to close to activate the transmitter side of that. Well, that's you know, that kit that Jim's selling there for $75 plus $20 postage works out a lot cheaper than 134 quid from China, doesn't it? But you have got to build it yourself. That's the only downside.
Mike's got one, by the way.
I got one here, the MX50.
Yeah.
It's nice and handy, but it's not reliable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use it often, Mike?
No. We have used it, but only very rarely, very seldom, because as you said, in the house it's difficult because of no filters in it, and outside it's reported to sometimes damage the rig itself. I'm not quite sure what the cause of this was, but there were several reports on it. And so with our QRP rigs being, some of them being relatively expensive, we didn't dare it.
I've not heard of damaging the radio. I've just heard that. I never used mine. Never used it. but I've heard other people using them, and they say that the audio that you transmit is not clean. It's terrible. You come out on more than one band. You can come out to various places on the band with them. They're just not very good to use. So, but I didn't realise they were £140 now, which is a lot.
Yeah, and they even don't give you 50 watts. It's more than 30 to 35 watts if you put in 5 watts. But of course, that's not bad if the quality would be better.
Yes, indeed.
I was reading a review this morning about, I know this is not about linears, I was reading a review about some of the QRP radios. The one that's come out top on every occasion as an all-rounder is the G90.
Yeah.
Because of the 20 watts, which is variable with the filtering, SDR radio, and built-in ATU. Well, I call it built-in tuner of some sort. But you know, I've touched wood, never had a bad experience with the G90. An all-round radio, all-round good radio. And I like them when you can vary the power. So
the G90 is absolutely the bee's knees, I think. It's really something very portable. It's not so much power consuming or current consuming, and it's very well built. I think they got real quality there made into the chassis there. It's really something built up very fine, very neat and clean, and it gives all a good signal. Anyway, that's our experience with the G90. I hope everyone else can give his consent to that. But it's something which still is to be bought new on the market. But I always expect that Zygo will bring out a new model and do some changes to it. But it's really a success story until now.
The only fly in the ointment is that the screen is the size of a postage stamp.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a little bit difficult, especially if you got problems with your eyes, as I do. But nevertheless, it's really something outstanding on the market, I think. There's nothing except perhaps excluding the KX2 from Elecraft, which is much more expensive. I own one too of it, and I'm absolutely a fan of Elecraft, but they are you pay through your nose for it. It's absolutely expensive, and you really don't want to lose it or to damage it. There's another problem with the service. Even you have problems getting it repaired by some experts here in Europe, because we had some minor issue with it, and the Italian distributor of Elecraft didn't respond to our request. The German one packed in, he gave up his shop, and there's only the Swiss seller, René Lutz, HB9 November Bravo Golf, doing it, and it's very expensive to send it to Switzerland and to get it back because of the taxes and so on.
Yeah, over here in England, there's the company that I think is quite good. It's called Cinetel, and they will take your Zygu radios back. I don't think, on the whole, they attempt to repair them. They just send a new one back to the person. So I bought several years ago the Zygu 5105 X5105, and I sent it back 2 times because there seemed to be faults on the ones I got. And the third one I got, I was pleased with it and disappointed with it. The audio quality is appalling, and particularly on CW usage, it was very, very poor indeed. When you plugged in headphones, the sound was just terrible. And also all kinds of glitches, quite a complicated menu on it, and all kinds of glitches. It looks like a lovely radio, built-in ATU, built-in battery. It's a very, very solid looking little radio. Nice screen on it. You know, it seems to have all the features you want. I haven't touched it for about my version of it. I brought it out, funnily, earlier this week, probably because I was thinking about this meeting, and I haven't touched it for about 4 years. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna redo it, and I'm gonna flash the firmware, put the latest firmware on, and maybe I'll be surprised how wonderful this radio is. So I spent an hour or so installing the new firmware onto this, which was straightforward. Turned it on, immediately made a QSO with a guy in France who turned out to be a British guy who's emigrated and living out in France now. Had a long QSO with him, running 5 watts, gave me a very good report, but it was such a terrible radio to use. And I've put it back in. I've got it here. I've put it back in the box. But I don't know if people have seen the Zygu radio before, but the 5105. But this is it, and it's a lovely sized radio. It's got a very, very good screen on it. It's extremely well made. I mean, the manual construction of it is very good. I wouldn't have any concerns at all about the radio. It's just there are aspects of it that just don't quite work properly. Not enough to persuade me to leave the ICOM 705 at home and take this out instead. That's the problem. And I was thinking probably what I'm going to do with this is sell it. And I was actually thinking, and I've used a G90, but I've never owned one. I was thinking, you know, I think I'm going to see what I can get for this and buy myself a G90, because I know that although the screen is very small, it's probably about the same size screen on the FT 817, 818. That's a tiny screen as well. And I think you can put up with that if the other bits of it work as they should do.
I've got one here, Nick. Not one of those. This one's the one I took up the hill when we went walking up the hill about a year ago.
Oh yeah.
It's called a RECENT, RS918. It covers all bands. It puts out, when we were up the hill, I took, it's got its own battery, inside. I think it's about 3.5 amp, and it put out 7 watts, 8 watts. Mm-hmm. And the first station we worked up on the top of that hilltop was into Siberia.
Yeah,
Siberia. After that was it. I could have switched it off. That made my day anyway. But I mean that you can hold it in one hand and it's got its battery inside.
Yeah.
Like you've just said, Nick, I haven't used it since we last went up there, when we went up that hill, which got to be at least a year to a year, maybe nearly 2 years ago. I don't know. But like you, Nick, it's such a nice little radio. You can buy them for, well, I've just had a quick look, £257, which is probably about €300.
Yeah.
But I haven't used it. And I've now got to the stage where I've got 3 radios for portable use. And I don't know which one to use, and why am I keeping hold of them? They're just mothballed. They're kept in the box. just don't know what to do with it. But it's too nice a radio. The audio sounds nice. It's got, you know, filtering in there. So, goodness me, I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with them. Too many radios.
Well, Ken, it's with the Chinese radios. You can be very lucky indeed, or you can
Yeah.
have a very bad specimen. It's always a question where it comes from. All of these radio come from China, of course, but from which factory? Who has assembled it? And there are several outlets for these radios. They are all the same type. They are announced as wearing the same name, so to speak, but they are assembled by different persons in different locations. And some of these are not reliable. Our experience with very cheap Chinese radios, the USDX clones and so on, are that sometimes, if you're lucky, you get a very good buy for cheap money. And sometimes when it comes from another source and it looks exactly alike, then you have a problem because there are kinks built into it. It's not working properly. The audio is terrible and so on. And you can't, you don't know this beforehand. So that's a problem. It's exactly the opposite as in buying a Yaesu radio or an ICOM radio. You know exactly what you get, and if you are not satisfied with it, you send it back and you get your money back, or you get another new radio. No problem with that. But it's not the same with the Chinese products, of course.
Yeah.
It's another thing with the true SDX, not the USDX, but the true SDX. Delta Lima 2 MAN has on its page a list from where you can buy it, and it is reliable. And I've bought mine from such a shop. And it works very, very well. And it's a very nice little radio, the True SDX. The output is in SSB maximum, I think, 2.5 watts only, in CW 5 watts. And with some equipment you can build by yourself, you can use it also on FT8. And it's quite nice, but it's not to be compared with the KX2 or so.
Well, yes, yeah. Do you know, I'll tell you what I think I'm going to do with this one, with this recent one. I mean, it looks, you can see the condition it's in. I'm going to take it down to Spain, and I'm going to use the 9-to-1, homemade 9-to-1 little transformer. I'm going to make it. I'm just going to put a wire out, and I've got myself the most minute little up and down Morse key, and I'm just going to see if it can work when I'm sat on the balcony.
Yeah.
In the evenings while the weather's good. You know, that's it. And if I work some stations, if I work someone, I'll be really pleased.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't have to working DX, just if I can work someone.
I've just got, we're still live on YouTube, and there's a guy who's watching us at the moment who's just come up on the chat on YouTube, who runs a YouTube channel called GT Retro World, which people might have come across. They do videos on, he does UK based, does videos on rallies and new equipment and reviews some of the new equipment. He was just asking people what we think about the new Yaesu FTX1. Was anyone thinking of purchasing one? I mean, it looks like a nice radio, but it does look like a very expensive radio. and even more expensive than the ICOM 705. And I'm not sure that I would be tempted to buy another very expensive radio. To be perfect, that was the reply I just said to him. But we'll have to see. But it looks as if it's going to be quite expensive.
Well,
I think Martin Lynch in the UK MLS has Martin Lynch and Sons have quoted a price which is definitely more expensive than the ICOM 705 for the FTX one.
About 1,600, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
1,600 and just over 2,000 for the 100-watt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blimey.
But there's lots of extras as well. So you get the radio, then you get bits that go with it.
There need to be lots of extras for that price, Phil.
Actually, I think it could be compared to the Elecraft KX2. It's also very expensive, and you also have to buy it from modules, which are put together by the dealer, but you have to pay everything extra. That is to say, the ATU has come extra, battery.
This bit plus that bit plus that bit plus that bit. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what it starts off at about $700-800, and suddenly you got a $1,200-1,300 piece of kit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a KX3, and but for reasons including the service issue, I just thought, nah, that's it. So someone wanted to buy it from me, and it's gone.
Yeah. The new Yaesu, I think it will be a very high-class radio in both versions. But because of the price, it's really no deal, I think. It's too expensive for these times. You get good quality radios, which are a lot cheaper, and which can also give you very great satisfaction and good working. But I think Yaesu has to reconsider its strategy. It's not this selling strategy is not fit for this time, I think.
Yeah, Rachel is watching us on YouTube, by the way, our club secretary, M1AYG, and she just said she thinks the Zygu G90 is brilliant, and that the tuner is extremely good as well in the G90.
It's worked a lot of people with them.
Yeah.
So Nick, I reckon Jim G4JBA may be getting a G90 then. He keeps toying with the idea.
Yeah, Rachel's just added the comment to it. The G90 also has a great SWR scanner built into it. Well, so does the F10, the 5105 and the 6100. They've got the SWR scanner built in as well, which is quite a nice feature. Yeah, and the guy on GT Retro World, sorry, I don't know your name, but he's just commented that it is definitely expensive, but the Optima version includes the ATU Linear, which is true. But as Phil commented, the Optima version is a lot more expensive.
Over $2,000, yeah.
Over £2,000. So, yeah, GT Retro World says never tried a G90. Maybe I should give one a go. As you can hear from members of the club here, lots of our people do use the G90 and do say it's an excellent radio. I mean, it obviously doesn't have a built-in battery, but with one of the LiPo batteries. Which are so small that will run that for several hours. Does it really matter? Do you have to plug a small battery in? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you could run it with a 6 ampere hour, I think.
Yeah.
It would be enough, and that's to be had for a cheap price, and it's not very big. So I think there would be no problem, for example, to put some tape around it and tape it on the underside of the G90 or something like that.
Does anyone know that if the G90 will run at its full power with a smaller battery. So on my ICOM 705, if I use one of the 3-cell LiPo batteries giving me 11.1 volts,
It drops down.
that gives you 10 watts on the 705.
Oh, it still does it? Right.
It still gives you 10 watts, yeah. Only because I was a bit too cowardly to stick the 4-cell one on, because I was slightly concerned that I might damage the radio if I put in more than 15 volts into it.
Well, I still use my, nickel metal hydride pack, which I use for taking away, and that drops down below 12, and it's still 10 watts.
Yeah.
But of course, the thing is, using it with that little amp, that amp I've got only needs 2.5 watts of drive, so I run the 705 on its internal battery, and I use this on the amp.
I don't know if you did the same as me, Phil, with the 705. I bought the larger capacity battery that fits onto it.
Yeah.
That makes a big it doesn't make any difference to the power outage, but it runs for hours and hours and hours on that bigger cell battery.
Oh yeah, just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I've never run it out. If I've taken it and used it portable, I've never run that battery out.
Yeah, but actually the voltage may be a problem with cheap Chinese clones, because they are usually only to be used with up to 12 volts. Especially if you see these USDX products, they may have a problem with 13.8 or even 12.8 volts from a lithium 4 battery, for example. And actually, I lost one of the USDX clones with it, because I put in 13.8 volts, and that was absolutely no go. It got up in smoke, and
use one of these. Don't have a problem with that. Mountain topper.
Oh yeah.
That's great. That's a really nice little radio.
We've got lots of chat on the YouTube channel now. So on YouTube, so after Rachel said about the SWR scanner, the guy from GT Retro World said, never tried the G90, maybe I should give it a go. And Rachel then commented, if the G90 goes wrong, just reload the firmware. I mean, you can do that with all the Xiegu radios, to be fair, that they all will allow you to reflash the firmware fairly straightforwardly. And then I don't know who this is. Oh, it's Storm Chaser Paul 2E0IJE. I have the G90 and I swear it will never leave my shack. Worked all the world on 10 watts and the Magi tenor. I don't think it will run a full 20 watts. He says. Well, so it's pushing Jim, you see, to buy that G90.
Yeah.
How much are they now?
They're just under £400, about £380 new. I think the dealers are all selling them. Senatel is selling them. They're all around the same price, £370, £380.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim is on watching us on YouTube. G5TM, good to see you, Tim. You'll have to come back to the club, by the way, Tim. He says, hi, folks. I'd love a KX2, but suspect I'd buy a 705 ahead of the new Yaesu.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I already made that jump to 705 and pleased with that. Right, Storm Chaser Paul said he paid 450. Was that I presume you meant for the G90, Paul? So they're definitely, Senetel's definitely selling that cheap at the moment, as is Martin Lynch.
Yeah, it's I think it's 490 euros at this moment. So that may well be 450 pounds, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Senatel, I'm just looking here, is 385.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim G5TM has just said G90 is a lot of radio for the money. There you go, Jim.
I can see he's going to go up to Martin Lynch on a jolly for a day and have to play with one.
And then another one of our subscribers on YouTube, we've got lots of chats suddenly appearing there. William N01 705 all day long. Several of us will agree with that.
Yeah.
It is a wonderful radio. It was expensive, but I think I sold my my old ICOM 706 G2 and my FT817, and that gave me, the bulk of the money towards the 705, and I haven't regretted it for a second.
Yeah, Martin Lynch has got them up 399.95, 400. But do they need the heatsink? That was the thing that I'm concerned.
I don't think so, Ken. You took yours up that. Ken came up a SOTA summit just a few miles from where I live here a couple of years ago, and you were running the G90. I don't remember it overheating. I didn't overheat, did it?
No, I think the heat sink is if you're running data modes, to be honest with you. That's the use of it. I have got one on mine. It sits underneath the G90. I think as an extra, I don't know what it cost, maybe an extra £70 when I bought it. But I thought, if I'm going to buy the G90, I'll buy the heat fan, the fan underneath it. And it never gets hot. I hear the fan coming in quickly when I'm running about 17, 18, 19 watts. I never run the full 20. I always keep it at about 18 watts. I hear the fan, but it never seems to get hot.
So a bit more chat on the YouTube here. So Paul says, yeah, it was 450 a couple of years ago for the G90. He's got DigiRig to do FT8 on it, so that's probably when you need that. I think Ken's right, you'd need that heatsink. And in fact, although he didn't comment on it, I know Jim, in his assembly notes for that linear amplifier, says if you want to run FT8 on it, you need to upgrade some of the resistors to 3-watt resistors, because otherwise they will overheat on that linear amplifier design of his. And Tim has said he promises he's going to come back to the club. So we'll take you up on that, Tim. We'll book you down for another night with us. And then Paul has just said, yeah, they do run warm if you're keyed down for a while, but I put a computer fan under mine and it keeps it cool. So there you go. A few quid for a computer fan running off your 5-volt, and off you go. Job done, Jim.
Yeah, I mean it's £60 for the official fan underneath. So and I was thinking of a 705, but it's 50% less cost-wise, isn't it? But obviously you don't get the higher back, the UHF and VHF. That's
well, the 705 has got VHF and UHF and D-Star on it as well. So that's how I joined.
Which I've never used.
I joined. Club's got a D-Star NES on a Thursday night, and I used the 705 for that.
Yeah.
GT Retro World has said, I wasn't aware this club existed until this popped up with the algorithm. So I'll have to check you guys out. You sure will, GT Retro World. We're having great fun. Started up in the Pennines, where we've still got a nice little core of members up here. But we've got members from everywhere now. And as you can see in the room here, out in the States, North Carolina, Mike and Adriana in Germany, Keith in Scotland, all over the place. And to GT Retro World, we launched the club last August with 38 members. We're now up to 87, I think, is the latest count. So we're having fun. Tim just asked, does the G90 do CW decoding? And Rachel said, yes, it does have.
Does it?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Rachel says it has.
Yeah.
Storm Chaser Paul said, I'm looking for an amplifier for mine at some point. And he says, yeah, he's agreeing with Rachel that he believes it does have CW decoding.
Yes, it does. It's not 100%. I don't think anything is really, but you can generally, I have looked at it and I have watched it, and you can complete the sentences on that decoding on the G90. You know, the missing letters, you can guess what the missing letters are when you read it, because it scrolls.
Ken, that's what you do when you listen to Morse code. Which is sometimes embarrassing if you get someone's name wrong, but
yeah, one of the things
I was calling CQ on 20 meters on CW last night, and a US station came up. I'm not going to give his call sign out here, particularly going out on YouTube as well. And lovely guy. And we had a chat for a while, and he gave me, what was I running? About 200 watts into my Wyndham antenna here, the off-center fed dipole, and he gave me 559. And then I was carried on putting out a CQ call, and I worked a couple of other stations, and then he gave me another call, and I thought, well, I've only just worked you. So I said, I've only just worked you. And he said, I know, he said, but I want to come back and say, you're up to 589 now, he says, out at my QTH. So that was pretty good. I was pretty pleased with that. Very, very, some nice conditions on 20 last night. Yeah, Rachel says it's a reasonable decoder.
Anyway, I've got a scoop. I'll catch you all next time.
All right. Cheers, Phil. Good to see you.
See you then. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah, I think there is so much on YouTube with the G90, so much information there. You can't go wrong. Beautiful, very good.
I think the only thing is the point that Mike made a bit earlier, and that is that the screen on it is very small. And I would say for anyone who's used the FT817, it's probably a similar size screen to that, and that is very small. Whereas the 705 screen, of course, is the same size as the ICOM 7300, and if you're used to the 7300, the 705 is really the same radio with a lot more in it. But you pays your money and takes your choice, don't you? And I think I think most people have to think very hard about spending, £1,500 on a radio, really, if it's an additional radio to something else they've already got.
You can buy a magnifying screen where you sit the front of the radio directly behind the screen, which has got little L-shaped legs on. You can see it on the internet, and it enlarges the screen to about 6 inches.
What's wrong with one of those?
Honestly, and they're only about...
We used to do that with the TV years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And the colour bands as well.
Yeah.
So just a bit more chat on YouTube to read it out to you. So Rachel says she also. Tim G5TM says, I've seen guys use the G90 tuner to tune ladder line fed doublets. Try doing that on any other inbuilt tuners. Good point, Tim. That's very good news. Didn't know it would do that. Rachel says she likes the FT891 for value for money and 100 watts. William said the FT891 and the Quantum STR with an RF tap is a good combo if you want to be portable with a scope as well. Only thing about the FT891, says William, is the menu. I hate it. Rachel says it's bigger than the FT817 screen and colour too. Tim says I've set my TX audio on my 891 and that's it. I've hardly ever used the menu. Well, Tim, that's a good point, isn't it? We're all the same. It's like every other electronic device, whether it's a washing machine or anything else you've got at home. They've all got amazingly complex menus and features, and you only use about 3 of them. And that's the same with all these radios, isn't it? Rachel said she agrees with the comment about the Yaesu menus, but I've always had ISO until the ICOM 705 came along. Anyway, we're having fun chatting on YouTube, but I think in a second we're going to close the YouTube channel down. But good to have your input, guys, and lovely to see you all. And to GT Retro, do come back to the club and have a chat with us. Be good to have you at any of our meetings. And to Tim, we definitely need to get you back, Tim. You were a very, very great start to the club last year because you came along, Tim, just after we launched the club in August last year, and you were I think our first outside speaker, and it was great, a great fun evening. There we go. Tim agrees with me. My washing machine is 99% mixed load and 30-degree wash. There you go.
Yeah.
My radio's the same. My radio's the same. You know, genuinely, how often do you fiddle with all the menu options, even the filtering? You know, I've got my CW filter built in on my ICOM, and when I go to CW, and I generally don't change that. Occasionally I fiddle with the filtering, but anyway, Tim just says, thank you for the chat. Lovely to hear you chatting. 73's guys. Yeah, 73, Tim. We'll be in touch. Let's get you back.
I'm going to log off also, so I want to say 73, but I'll see some of you tomorrow night.
Cheers there, Bob. 73's.
Good night, Bob.
Well, with me, Bob. Cheers.
Good night. Good night.
Hey, Bob. No. I think Tim, because Tim goes mobile a lot. That's what he does. And he experiments with different mobile antennas. A lot of them are commercial. And I think he's put one or two ideas together of homemade ones. I think he'd be a good guy to get on here to give us his experiences of static mobile or portable or whatever he wants to call it with his different antennas. Be interesting to see what his overall thoughts are.
Yeah, Ken, that was it. I mean, he gave us a talk about operating portable last year, but it would be good to have him back to talk about different antennas that he uses and which ones he, you know, particularly from a car when he operates mobile. So just going back to his guys, GT Retro Rod is from Guysborough District Amateur Radio Club. So he's asking, am I aware of them? Which I am. So good to see you. William says, take care, folks. 73s. So anyway, guys, I'm Nick, by the way, G4IWO. Nice to see you on YouTube. I think we're going to close down the stream in a second. We're losing our members here, and it'll probably end up with about 2 people chatting together, which is fine, but I don't think they necessarily want that live on YouTube. So yeah, good to see you, all those of you on YouTube, in addition to club members here, and thanks very much for joining us, and hope you enjoyed the evening at our club. For those of you watching on YouTube, our next meeting is in 2 weeks' time, and we've got a talk on a beginner's guide to using satellites, amateur radio satellites, which should be good fun. So looking forward to that. So 73s to everyone on YouTube, including our club secretary, Rachel. Nice to see you, Rachel, and everyone else as well.